So good morning, everybody. Kate, will you keep admitting people as they hop in? Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you all so much for coming today. My name is Matt Stinchcomb with Partners for Climate Action. Really excited about today's conversation. I've been thinking and reading a lot about bioregionalism, and it's such an honor to have Stephanie Mills with us today. I thought I'd just open with a couple words from Thomas Berry, who is a local theologian and environmentalist. And he wrote that we must begin to see that our basic identity is not primarily the political unit, but the bioregional community. The real difficulty of the various declining communities along the Hudson River is precisely that they think of themselves too much in political or commercial terms. Consequently, they look for their renewal through these agencies rather than through an effective relationship to the land, the river, and their fertility. So to set the context for today, Bob was talking a little bit about this before the webinar started. At Partners for Climate Action, we really believe that the social, economic, and ecological polycrisis, if you want to call it that, that we're all enmeshed in right now is rooted in disconnection. We're disconnected from ourselves, from our neighbors, the human and non-human neighbors, and also from the earth. And it's this disconnection that enables us to commit the atrocities, small and large, that we do as humans. It is this disconnection that clouds the fundamental truth of the interconnection and interdependence of all things, and drives the cultivation of technologies, ideologies, and systems that champion a worldview where we see ourselves as separate from the whole. As Bob was just saying, we are nature, right? We're not separate from nature. So, you know, if we're to meet this moment and recognize that our failures, our successes, our fates are all shared, we need urgently to take control of our own futures and accelerate and deepen efforts to address these interrelated crises in our own backyards. And then, using the resources that exist locally, support the emergence of local solutions from and with local communities. It's about making decisions and taking actions that honor all the history, wisdom, and human and non-human communities that are in a place. In short, we must come together as a bioregion. So that's very much what's driving our work at Partners for Climate Action, is how do we engage and activate all of the people and resources that exist here in service to this place with a deep understanding of this place that honors the particularity of this place. So for those of you who aren't familiar, and Stephanie will certainly get into this more, bioregionalism is a philosophy that advocates for the organization of political, cultural, and economic systems based on naturally defined areas known as bioregions, or kind of like an ecoregion. These bioregions are delineated by physical and environmental features such as watershed boundaries, in our case, the estuary watershed of the Hudson, soil composition, and terrain characteristics. Emphasizing that the identification of a bioregion is both a physical and cultural phenomenon, bioregionalism underscores the significance of local populations' knowledge and solutions for sustainable and just systems. In his 1983 essay, Bioregions, Peter Berg, who I'm sure Stephanie will tell us a bit about, continues that in bioregionalism, people are also counted as an integral aspect of a place's life, and can be seen in the ecologically adaptive cultures of, ecologically adaptive cultures of early inhabitants, and in the activities of present-day re-inhabitants who attempt to harmonize in a sustainable way with the place where they live. And I really think that's all of you, or many of you that I know on this call, certainly are the re-inhabitants who are doing this. So where is it that we all live? And I'm going to get Steph in 1 second, but I did just think it would be helpful to share one photo. This is the estuary watershed of the Hudson River. The colored areas that you see there are areas of significant biodiversity, important areas of biodiversity. So basically, from the dam up Troy all the way down northern New York City, the Hudson's actually an estuary, as I'm sure you all know. With a river that flows in two directions, right? Changing directions every 6 hours. So you've got the Atlantic tides pushing up, fresh water pushing down. And we have this unique ecosystem that's really at the essence or the center of our place. This entire area that you're seeing here spans about 5,312 square miles. It's a pretty big bioregion. Touches briefly into New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, but is really centered here in New York. It's home to more than 200 species of fish, 19 kinds of rare birds, and 140 rare plants. There's about 2 million people who live within the Hudson estuary. And it's also home to these significant areas of biodiversity. So all of which are critical to maintaining the health of all living beings and the river itself. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce you today to Stephanie Mills, and really one of the progenitors of bioregionalism, and a real gift to have her with us today. Stephanie, please forgive me. I'm going to read just highlights from your very impressive bio, and then I'll pass it off to you. A longtime bioregionalist, Mills was launched into prominence with her 1969 Mills College commencement address, "The Future is a Cruel Hoax." She has served on countless boards, from that of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America to her local natural food co-op. She was editor-in-chief of Earth Times, Not Man Apart, and Cry, California, and assistant editor of Coevolution Quarterly. She edited the communities section of the Millennium Whole Earth catalog. She wrote and published scores of essays, editorials, and books, appearing in publications from Resurgence and Orion to the Britannica Book of the Year, and in numerous anthologies. In 1984, following a life-changing encounter at the first North American Bioregional Congress, Mills quit the San Francisco Bay Area for Northwest Lower Michigan, where she lives now and where she's joining us from today. Began writing books and also helped to organize the Great Lakes Bioregional Congresses and start a local currency. Whatever Happened to Ecology, her first book, chronicled her early years in activism and the emerging ethos of bioregionalism. In service of the wild, restoring and re-inhabiting damaged land, she combined an environmental history of her bioregion with case studies and histories of ecological restoration, ranging from Aldo Leopold's Sand Country Farm to Auroraville and Tamil Nadu. Her most recent book, On Gandhi's Path, Bob Swan's Work for Peace and Community, is a biography of Robert Swan, a war resister and colleague of E.F. Schumacher, in crafting the means to an economics as if people mattered. I also have the great honor of serving on the board at the Schumacher Center for New Economics, and was grateful for them to put me in touch with Stephanie. Stephanie Mills is a fellow of the Post-Carbon Institute and was featured in the 2010 PBS documentary Earth Days. In 2009, Mills was awarded an honorary doctorate by her alma mater. The citation called her a visionary ecological activist and pioneering bioregionalist whose unswerving advocacy for the preservation of our shared planet and powerful message of personal responsibility teach us that a single voice can transform the world. So with that, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand it off to you to share some remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions and have a conversation. So Stephanie, thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you very much, Matt. And hello, everybody. I'm going to have to get rid of the self view here because there's entirely too much of that navel staring going on in my life. Thanks for the generous introduction and the opportunity to learn a little bit about your tremendous bioregion and the organization that's already underway. I titled my talk Bioregionalism and a Good Life because living well in a particular place is both a material proposition and a spiritual proposition, as well as a political and economic challenge. And there are values at the basis of it. And bioregionalism locates value in nature and in the biotic community. You know, how can we live a good life apart from all the beings that we've co-evolved with? We can't. So I got involved with bioregionalism in the mid-70s. I had been working in a conventional and good environmental organization, Friends of the Earth, and some other environmental action groups. And we were, you know, it was kind of an inception of the environmental movement. It was like the ecology movement was sort of springing up in response to this dawning understanding of the interrelatedness of all beings, and you know, all the challenges that we were facing. And environmentalism, it seemed to me, began to sort of professionalize things, not necessarily a bad idea, but to kind of move humanity into the center and into a kind of a managerial relationship to deal with these problems. But bioregionalism, to me, as the movement sort of bubbled up out in the San Francisco Bay estuary where I was at the time, was centered on ecology and the radical implications of ecology, of not being separate from our surroundings. And it also was and still is a cultural idea. I mean, and harking back to the long experience of our species, the majority of our experience as a species of living as members of ecosystems in reciprocity with our bioregions. We know way more about that in our bones and in our very nature than we do about how to be creatures alienated from nature and living in a kind of a technological trance and synthetic environment. So so bioregionalism was kind of resurrecting some of the potentials for human beings to participate in biotic community, to reclaim some of the wildness in our nature, and to sort of reassert the freedom of being alive and creaturely. One of the great things about bioregionalism, and so vital in this time of you know, globalization and a kind of a cultural homogenization, was that it pointed to natural diversity in all its forms, the particularities of niches, of habitats, of native plant communities, and the tremendous diversity of human cultures that have arisen as parts of different bioregions. Living out in California as I did, you know, there was the historic and still vital example of, you know, 200 different indigenous groups and languages flourishing in a variety of terrains, having co-evolved and found elegant ways of sustaining themselves in over long stretches of time. So those understandings of what human beings can be and how various human beings can be in diverse natural settings really were and are very inspiring to me, because it seems that it's axiomatic that diversity, ecosystem diversity, contributes to stability, and it's not, and homogeneous systems, centralized homogeneous systems, are extremely vulnerable to disruption. So part of the wisdom of bioregionalism is decentralizing and relocalizing, and finding ways to develop good lives in specific places, not geometric geopolitical entities. I mean, those abstractions have to be kind of conjured with, I guess, but moving forward together, we really want to employ all our senses to have palpable understandings of the places where we are. One of the great things that bioregional groups can do is things like, just direct experience of nature walks, studying natural history. A lot of that kind of pursuit of curiosity and acquaintance with all our relations seems to be being crowded out of academe, and it presents an opportunity for us to develop, vernacular knowledge of our home places, to do biological inventories of our creek sheds, that kind of thing. You're in an enormous and storied and powerful region in the Hudson estuary, and it may, one of the sort of great possibilities of bioregional understanding and watershed consciousness is to scale down to the level of the creek or the stream, and have a focus that is maybe less daunting than 200 square miles. Not necessarily, but watersheds are nested wholes and provide a natural basis for community organizing that can kind of branch out and grow. And people can reasonably take responsibility for a neighborhood creek or wetland. And so it sort of gives lots of realms of possibility and interest, and satisfaction too. One of Peter Berg, who Matt mentioned, one of the leading thinkers of bioregionalism, did a significant action of pulling the sidewalk up next to his household, where the Planet Drum Foundation's office was, and planting native plants. And he had to negotiate with the city of San Francisco to, do that thing. But the native plant garden there attracts pollinators. I understand that people in your partnership are doing native plant gardening, but it's a chance, that kind of action, or daylighting creeks, or tracing the paths of creeks in urban areas, and just doing what one bioregional teacher calls think walks, all are ways to help people living there reclaim a sense of the underlying actualities, the biophysical reality of places where they live. And I have been a longtime technology critic, and part of that is just understanding that technology is made of stuff that has to be extracted from somewhere, and it runs on energy that has to be mined or drilled for. And so I think, at this moment, when it seems like it's about to colonize our imaginations entirely, it's important to sort of have a critical understanding of it, find ways to sort of minimize its presence and domination in our lives, and redirect our attention to the natural systems that surround us, and the proposition of restoring them, and imagining what would be a decent subsistence, a good life, a life that did not put us in complicity with a tremendous amount of extractive and colonial evil. And how do we do that? Well, one possibility, and it's a durable goods, is the whole idea of study groups. There are tremendous array of, there's just an awful lot of great literature of bioregionalism, natural history, opportunities to get together and develop the skills of self-study, becoming more authoritative about our surroundings, and also engaging in the practice of counsel, learning how to come to agreements over longer term. I mean, that's another characteristic of small scale indigenous cultures, was not making haste to make decisions, and learning how to respect minority rights by integrating everybody in a particular surrounding in the council, in the discussion. So forming study groups, creek shed study groups, or kill shed study groups might be something to consider. And skill sharing too, trying to imagine how we can all find ways to consume less, to reduce our demands on our bioregions and support each other. Really throw ourselves into the proposition of mutual aid. One of the most empowering practices of bioregionalism is mapping, and you have a spectacular map there. Again, Peter Berg developed this wonderful workbook, Discovering Your Life Place, which is a simple group mapping exercise that can any level of participants can engage in, from school kids to grown-ups to design classes. And it's a way of getting on paper your sense of your own bioregion or microregion in collaboration with others, and discovering what you know and what you need to know. I've taught this with a lot of classes of writers, and the range of what people know about their own places is considerable. It goes everything from not knowing which way is north, to having a fine. I live in an area where people hunt, and some students have a very fine-grained understanding of how the deer are moving. So that kind of mapping practice can be a way of reclaiming and developing knowledge of one's own bioregion or microregion, and also beginning to imagine some cultural celebrations. Bioregionalism is for sure about distinct terrains, organic terrains, and it's got promise and sort of radical implications as we think about the sort of hideousness that nation-state borders are inflicting now, to propose and present the living alternative to understanding a territory and belonging to a territory and in a biotic community, and having loyalty to that, and committing to restoring it and restoring its ability to sustain a diversity of life forms is just, I mean, it's such a true and beautiful alternative, and it's grounded in the truth of life on Earth. It makes for good work, and good work is part of a good life, a critical part of a good life. So you know, I was looking through my files of 50 years worth of bioregional thought and gathering and communication among groups, and seeing this range of poetry and local organizing for place defense, developing culture, including food, and celebrations, all species parades, critical thinking about group process, and see that, you know, this is this is very fertile ground and always has been. And I think it's, it speaks to our natural inclinations as people and communities. We don't want to live in a vacuum or a completely contrived surrounding. And thinking about, all the hullabaloo about artificial intelligence these days, I thought of something I heard at a Society for Ecological Restoration meeting from a botanist who was counseling a grad student in the audience who wondered what to do with his life. And this man said, the botanist said, commit yourself to the study of an organism. That plant will never lie to you. And in a time when, sort of disinformation and synthetic realities are clamoring for our attention, the idea of committing ourselves to learning what's going on in our bioregions seems to me a great way to get anchored in some truth that is not abstract and that won't lie to us. So I think I've probably talked quite enough, and I wonder if we should have some discussion.
Stephanie, thank you so much. I took a lot of notes here and a lot of really great ideas, and I'm already looking forward to the all species parade that we're going to be organizing very soon, I hope. So I'm inviting everybody now to throw questions into the chat, and I'll try to moderate those, and hopefully we'll get to everybody. But to begin, I know a lot of the people who are on this call right now, and I know that they're all interested in, the re-inhabitation of the estuary watershed, right? These are people who are doing this good work here already. And you did mention a few things like, study groups, creek shed, which I love, or kill shed for those of us here. Groups, think walks, but, where would you encourage us to begin? How might we come together as a bioregion here? Are there examples of other places that you've seen do this successfully, and what were some of the steps that they took?
Well, of course, every locale is gonna have and want its own style. Probably the archetype of re-inhabitation that I know of is out in Northern California in the Mattole River Valley. I don't know if you can see this image. There's a collection of writings by Freeman House, who was one of the early thinkers of bioregionalism. And it started in the mid-70s. People who were counterculturalists in San Francisco, who already had kind of an ethic of mutual aid and minimal materialism, went back to the land in Northern California in a sort of a figured topographical land, found a watershed that happened to be undammed, or landed in this place. It wasn't like they were seeking it out with a conscious intention, I don't think. But they wound up in the Mattole River watershed and focused on salmon there. And part of the reason was just a tremendously charismatic animal and a source of natural provision, and an interesting challenge because those native races of salmon were severely compromised. So they took it upon themselves to see if they could restore the salmon, and had to follow over and they're at it to this day, and will be perhaps for centuries, but found themselves following the necessities all the way up to the ridge lines of the watershed. It was not enough to have hatch boxes. It was not enough to armor creeks. It involved revegetating the uplands and getting involved with road commissions about culverts and that sort of thing. I mean, it was an organic process that began with a commitment to place and to a kind of a keystone species in that place, and discovering all the interconnections. So those would be different for every kill. I noticed when I was doing a little cursory research on your estuary that sturgeon are in the Hudson, and I don't know if that would ever be a focus for a group. I think that endangered species preservation, which this was, is a way to have a focus and see where it leads. So those would be some concrete things to try. And then gatherings, face-to-face gatherings, I think, are incredibly valuable and a real important part of the bioregional movement over the years. And because you are in this big but comprehensible region, you could consider having a gathering, and the model of federation, federation kind of fits with watershed organizing in the sense that if you have creek or kill organizations that are place located, then they can connect on out to the ridgeline of the estuary. And finding ways to do it on the cheap is good. It's really good. We need the practice for that. And so anyway, those are some thoughts.
That's great. Thank you. So there's been some great resources that are being shared in the chat here, so I encourage you all to check those out. Andrew Faust is talking a little bit about the need to move beyond, just the kind of ecological environmentalism, and think about how this can be applied to economy, infrastructure, and ecology. And another area I'm particularly interested in is democracy and politics. And there's some small examples in our bioregion that I think are promising. One that comes to mind are the Hudson 7, the 7 communities that get their drinking water from the Hudson. And while they're not necessarily operating in, like a single political unit, they're crossing party lines, and they are advocating and working together to protect the health of the Hudson. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on kind of the political implications for bioregionalism, or are there examples of bioregional thinking in politics that you're aware of?
Well, good question. I'm thinking about starting at the very most local level of in our part of the world, it's townships, where that's direct democracy. And although they're organized, geometrically, watersheds begin to impinge in those places. Politically, I don't have a really great answer for that, to tell you the truth. I think that this practice of showing up at meetings, and the county commission meetings, being a citizen in places like where there are road commissions, or getting to know who the drain commissioner in your county is, those kinds of aspects of local governance that really have to do with terrain are important places where these ideas can begin to interpenetrate, and some working relations across assumed prejudices and boundaries can happen. But I think it's almost a contradiction in turn. You get to a certain level and you're dealing with abstract geopolitical entities and parties, and maybe there's a way to kind of work within those things. But for the long-term development, I think relocalization, face-to-face democracy, and that kind of work, building local resilience, and at some point, raising questions of carrying capacity, and challenging the idea that growth has to continue, are really important. Now, nobody's going to run on those platforms, but I think in smaller settings, you can begin to engage with those and sort of build understanding.
Yeah, that's great. And it kind of touches on something that you've mentioned a few times, and that's the issue of scale, right? You talked about the creek shed. You talked about, the estuary watershed is massive, right? In your experience, at what scale do you feel that organizing or coming together is most effective? I mean, is it at the creek level? Is it broader? I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Gosh, well, I'll quote a wonderful sage and world thinker, Hazel Henderson, used to say, different roles for different souls. I think that it's essential to have some grassroots organizing going on at a hyper local level, because that's where legitimacy is going to come from. But to work to connect those locales and articulate a larger vision is really valuable too. And some, different individuals are going to have different kinds of talents for leadership and facilitating communication, and it's just so important not to be entranced by hierarchy, and not what to say. I mean, the big picture is too big in some ways. I mean, we have to sort of have a look at it and see where we fit in, but to find a scale that is comprehensible for a lot of people and connected to something actual is important. I that's not a very concrete answer to your question, Matt. I'm sorry. Huh.
Well, no, I think it's great. And, I think these are the big questions. I don't have any answers. I think we're all just, looking for something different. And actually, I was reading something that Thomas Berry wrote about bioregionalism. And he said, basically, what's needed is the reinvention of the human at the species level. And I'm kind of curious about, you're right, like bringing this about is so in such contrast to the thinking that seems to drive our systems now. How might we make these changes at the consciousness level? And what are the practices? I think you touched on some earlier, but I agree with Thomas Berry. Like, this is the shift that's required. It's what we were talking about at the beginning, right? The disconnection that we have from the systems of which we are a part. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts about how we might reinvent the human species. Small question, just where do we start?
Yeah, well, through participation in natural systems, I think that the work you're doing with restoration and reforestation, if it's undertaken in the proper spirit, that's gonna sort of change one's essence. You get into an affective relationship with a wild being, a tree. That's gonna have some consequences. I think that childhood education, nature education, again, undertaken with the right spirit, getting kids involved in experiencing some reciprocity with free nature. Very, very important. And ceremonial practices, not cultural expropriation, but things like water ceremonies. Again, if you were to wind up with an estuary wide gathering or sub watershed gatherings, bringing waters from all the tributaries and from the tributaries and pouring them in to the larger body of water can be a very powerful and eloquent action. Seasonal celebrations can help begin to sort of remake the human, remake us from within and without. Just just studying the moon. Where's the moon rising tonight? And how is it moved across the horizon? I mean, just paying attention to making a practice of noticing where we are on the planet and with whom, and also I think reconnecting with our bodies and those, the fact that something Thomas Berry said that was so such a keeper. If human consciousness had evolved on the moon, he said it would be as barren as the moon. So noticing what we're capable of, because our species has been in conversation for 1,000,000 years with living systems.
Thank you. Just two quick things. Andrew, I saw your message about, whether it's a broader discussion with everybody, and I think we can invite that just with so many people. I'm trying to just pull from what I'm seeing in this thread. I do want to encourage everybody, though, to look at the chat, because people are sharing a lot of great resources, and there are learning opportunities and places to connect, and information that's being shared there. But for the sake of the webinar, I don't think we're going to open it up to everybody talking right now. I do want to pull a question from Sebastian, who said, building off the politics questions, thinking about the social and economic dimensions of bioregionalism. What does bioregionalism say regarding relationships to land and economic relationships with each other? Are there movements for communalization of land and the means of production happening within bioregionalism?
Not that I know of, but it doesn't mean that they aren't happening. And I think of the ongoing experiments, and to call them experiments, it sounds a little too conditional, but efforts in intentional communities, where oftentimes those are started because of wanting to have other forms of tenure in land and treatment of land. One that's a pretty big example is the farm in Summertown, Tennessee. And that sort of speaks to the question of scale too, where people are dealing with a kind of a comprehensible but big extent of land, and trying to develop some economic means on it that are not exploitive. But yeah, I think that I'm sure it's going on, and I think that probably North America lags behind Latin America in those kinds of initiatives and understandings.
Thank you. And again, I'm reminding everyone to save the chat and look there. There's some really great resources being shared. We'll send out the links to everybody who registered. And I also encourage you all to join our mailing list at Climate Action HV, because if you are interested in this topic, we are interested in bringing people together around this topic. So it sounds like there's a lot of energy there, and so yeah, let's figure out a way to stay in touch with each other. We've got about 3 minutes left. Maybe I'll try to sneak in one more question. I'm curious about the mapping exercise that you've done, and if one were to, or if a group of us were to start to map the bioregion, what do you think are the things that we must include?
Well, I'll go to the source. This wonderful book, Peter's mapping thing. You can include an infinity of detail, but you start the map by locating yourself, you indicate north, you draw the weather, you know, where the prevailing weather comes from. Then the watersheds, body of water, then the high ground, then the soil type, then the plants and animals, then the worst things people are doing and the best things people are doing. I mean, that's a high speed rendition of it, but it's elemental, but it's a great place to begin. And you've got your beautiful Hudson estuary map from your and and I see that you indicated levels of high biodiversity, but as you know, we shared Dave McCluskey's rubrics on mapping, and you've mentioned the sort of economic and demographic dimensions that could be included in your maps. But I think you know, keeping it simple, and also, you know, having fun with it and making it beautiful, because it's something to engage us and to capture our love and loyalty.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. What a treat and an honor to have you here. And I really appreciate your time and all your insight for being with us today. I want to thank all of you all for joining us today too. And we will make sure we share the resources with you all that were shared today, including some of the writers and thinkers that Stephanie mentioned. And Andrew, thank you for all of your insight, and I encourage you all to check out Andrew's work. We'll share the links to those too, and want to invite you all to our next webinar, which is on February
13th.
February 13th with Dr. Anton Simon, where we'll be doing a deep dive into how climate change could be unfolding in our bioregion. So thank you all again. ClimateActionHV.org. You can sign up for our mailing list. You can see when we have upcoming events. And I really appreciate you all being with us today. And Stephanie, thank you again. This was a real gift.
Oh, thank you very much. Good luck all going forward.